for many reasons. One is because in her new book called Unfinished, she is completely and totally honest. And the scariest thing in the world is to put your heart on a page of a book and hand it to someone and say, this is me. And that's what Priyanka Chopra is doing with her new book. Priyanka, hi, how are you?
Oh my gosh, Hoda, every time I hear you talk, I remember why I'm such a fan. You are such an articulate, special
Oh,
woman. Really are. I wish you so much love always. I
oh,
love listening to you.
well, I was listening to you. In fact, I love watching you through the years as you do interviews, or I think you were at a big event for Forbes magazine, and it was pre-Nick, pre-everything. You were at this window in your life. It was a window where people were asking you about, like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to get married? And you were on with another very famous businesswoman, and she said to you, my mom asked me one question about you. She said to make sure that you get married soon. And I remember thinking, your life was so full and so rich. How did that constant question throughout your life, how did that play with you?
Well, I have to say, initially, it really annoyed me. And I used to feel like I'm being defined by my romantic relationship. And whenever, especially early on when I was 18, 19, and I just started working in the entertainment business back in India, I remember I used to feel like, I used to get reduced to blah, blah, blah's girlfriend, or,
Mm-hmm.
what was written about me ended up being so much more about my romantic life that I took a pledge at that time. Whenever somebody would ask me about my relationships, I would be like, I'll talk about it when I'm married. Just don't want to talk about it till then. Never did till my husband.
You are bold and brave, man, because in that world, especially because when you live in the public eye, people kind of demand that you share other parts of you, not just what you do in the
But
movies.
absolutely understand that. And I understand that when you're a public person, a part of your life will be consumed, on dinner table conversation, if you might want to call it. But that doesn't mean the human being that you are needs to as well. So if 90% of your life can be a public person, 10 can be yours because, I'm not an elected official, nor are you. No one can demand anything of me, and I don't have to owe anybody an explanation unless I'm ready, you know?
By the way, this right now. If I were listening to this drive in my car, I'd be doing a hallelujah out the window. You're right. You don't have to. We don't owe anyone anything. But
We don't, especially expectations from society or people that literally have been built to create ceilings and glass ceilings for everyone, for every situation, especially a girl. Why does every fairy tale end with a woman getting married?
why does it? I know. I don't read those to Haley. By the way, she doesn't even
Don't.
know Cinderella exists yet. She don't. She don't. Did you? Were you a Cinderella fan, by the way, when you were a
I was
kid?
all the fairy tales
Yeah.
fans, but I think I like the Grimm's fairy tales even more now as an adult. I realize, why was I such a dark child?
Well, it's so funny because listening to your life, it's pretty incredible. I mean, when I was reading about your mom having two MDs and speaking, 8, 9 languages, and your dad being a doctor and a musician, I was thinking, boy, like if you didn't hit it out of the park, where your mom and dad like, hey, slacker, like pick it up. Did they expect a lot from you?
Not really. My parents never had any kind of pressure on me. I think that's what gave me the ability to sort of, be an achiever. My parents were, whatever you pick in your life, like it and be happy. My mom said, whether it's a guy, whether it's a job, whatever it is, as long as you like it and you're happy. The only thing that I got pressure for, if I may call it pressure, from my mom since I was like 5 years old, I remember hearing this. She said, you'll always be financially independent. It doesn't matter whose daughter you are or whose wife you will be. You will be financially independent. So just think about that growing up, whatever
Why
that
was
might be.
why was that so important for her to say that, do you think?
I think she was an ambitious woman who was married to someone who treated her as an equal partner.
Mm.
They worked together, they lived together, and in home and at work. I always saw them sort of have this mutual sense of respect for each other,
Mhm.
and and I think that was just so magical to me. And I think she wanted me to have that in a world where, women sometimes we get defined by the men in our lives
Mhm.
instead of our achievements.
Wow, and to think about, I mean, watching your mom and dad, that's kind of how you define what the right relationship is. What was it like? What were they like together as a married couple?
I mean, look, they had some rule that they would never fight in front of the kids. I've seen
Oh.
it just like once. I've never have seen my parents sort of, get at each other, even though I knew that it happened sometimes, when it was eerily silent or like mom would be listening to loud music on headphones, and I knew something was up. But besides that, I think what I saw mostly was, having like a silent partnership where they saw the world together, they traveled together, they did road trips together. I remember
Mhm.
as a family when I was 4 years old, every weekend we'd, jump into the car and drive into the mountains and stop wherever we wanted, grab food, and then go to a restaurant or a hotel and just stay there. And it was us as a family just discovering the world. And it was such a sense of adventure with my parents.
You were a kid, I think a 13-year-old kid, which is everybody's most awkward stage of life, but to come to the States and to suddenly for the first time be different, be the one who's, I mean, I was always the different kid in school. I was the one who I was thought they couldn't pronounce my name. Everyone would, when we played spin the bottle as, for the kiss, a guy looked at me and said, "Oh no, that's going too far. Like I won't kiss her." And I remember I was like, it was like a knife in my heart. But how did you
Oh my
deal with
God.
feeling different or feeling other? How did you react?
I became meek, I think,
Mm.
and I'm not a meek person. I've always been bold. I've always been on the front foot. Sorry, that's a cricket reference, but but I'm not on the defense, on the
Yeah.
offense.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll translate. But I think just being different and not seeing more people that looked like me, in pop culture, in on magazines, or being like even my name was hard to pronounce. I had to explain it. Where I come from, there were misconceptions, especially at that time. This is like late 90s, high school, about just did you go to school on an elephant, like weird stuff, which
Yeah.
was kids are cruel and mean and ignorant sometimes, and it was really hard. Also, figuring out a completely new country and a completely new culture at any age is hard to do. At 13 it's huge. But when I landed into America, I had a little bit of a different experience in the beginning. I was very enamored by American high schools. I loved the fact that girls wore makeup at 13, 14. I was never allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Or pluck your eyebrows. Like, what? That was insane. And at 13, when you land into school and you're like, oh, girls are shaving their legs and they're wearing shorts, and you're flirting with boys. I was so mind blown. That was the biggest culture shock for me. was I was like, this was like 90210 or Saved by the Bell.
Were your parents kind of like freaked out a little? Like, uh-oh, now she wants to follow this, these marching orders.
I didn't tell them.
Yeah.
Who would tell them?
Exactly.
I came back home as the good girl and, put my hair in a braid, took off all my makeup. But when I went to school, I was in short
Girl.
shorts. My hair was down.
Wow. I mean, you have such a you write about in your book so many beautiful moments and things with your family and also difficult ones. And I was thinking about I there are daddy's girls and then there are daddy's girls. And your proof is just how you lived and also tattooed right there on your arm. And I was just thinking what it must have been like to to lose your dad. And I wondered what did you lose the day he passed?
The thing, look, we all have parents and we're all going to lose them at some point, right? It's like the scientist in me is like, all right, I know that. That's a fact. But my dad was my biggest cheerleader. Like he would he would yell louder than me when I won an award, from like a participation certificate to, best actress. Like he would be
Oh.
the one, embarrassingly so, Hoda. I had to, after like my 30th award or whatever, I was like, Dad, we're cool now. You just be cool, be cool. But he just couldn't be cool. He was my hype man. And it was the silence
Mm,
after he
mm,
was gone that was,
mm,
not that I didn't have that support and love from my family, my mom and my brother, my friends, but it was just that it was not, it was silent, it was quiet,
mm,
it wasn't loud, it wasn't the music you hear before you walk into the ring.
mm.
And that was a big loss.
Yeah.
I felt my foundation shook.
Yeah. Do you still feel him?
I feel like he's made a lot of things happen in my life,
Mm,
in a weird way. And also, sort of, after I dealt with his death, which wasn't immediate, I didn't deal with it immediately at all. I kind of, went back to work 4 days after my dad died.
mm,
I was back on set because my work has always been my rock. The one thing that has stood by me through my career has been my job.
mm,
Navigating it, doing, big movies, small movies, starting new things. But I've, the creative, the arts have been, my rock. And that's the only thing I knew how to turn to. And I did. But after I dealt with it, after spending a little bit of time in the darkness,
mm,
feeling, grieving, which lasted a while. It was about 2 years, I think,
mm,
where I felt like I also moved to America for Quantico at the first
mm,
time. I was in a different country, didn't have friends, didn't know anybody, on a job which was 15-hour days, 6 days a week.
mm,
It was, I'd just gotten out of a relationship as well. It was all just like endings and beginnings. And,
mhm.
but it's choosing yourself that really helped me get out of it. I
Wow.
felt that if I didn't deal with what I was feeling, or if I didn't pull myself out of it, I would lose the job that I'd worked really hard for,
Mhm.
because, I was carrying my grief and my sadness to work, and you couldn't not my job. You can't.
I was going to say, some people I feel like do that. They find a place, they take their horrible pain, they stuff it down there, and they just go about their business. And that can only last for so long. You're right.
It's
If
like
you're
a
in a,
band-aid.
yeah. And eventually, no matter what, you're going to end up having it all pour out. So was that a conscious decision? Did you say, I'm going to deal with it? Or was it just a confluence of events?
I think it was over a period of time. I think
Yeah.
for a good 2 years, I incubated.
Yeah.
I ended up
Yeah.
not wanting to be around people. I ended up, coming back home, sitting in front of the TV, and, eating midnight snacks and watching TV till 3 o'clock in the morning, procrastinating, and then waking up after 3 hours and going to work, not being inspired, not being my best.
Mm-hmm.
And I indulged in that for a long period. And then I started seeing it. I started
Mm-hmm.
seeing it on, in the work that I was creating, in the art that I was creating. And it was a big question of, I have spent a large part of more than half of my life building this career. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be able to have a contribution to the arts. That's who I am. That's who I
Mm-hmm.
want to be. And was it worth it to
Hmm.
be so sad?
Hmm.
Is it worth it to be seduced by sadness and grief? And slowly, I think I started choosing to change my patterns. Like, I
Hmm.
wouldn't come back home directly. Maybe I'd meet a friend for a drink and then come back home, or not sit on the same couch and wear the same pajamas, and eat the same chips, and live in that comfort bubble that we all do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
instead,
That's a,
actually
yeah.
push myself out and, go have a bath or do something else. And I just took one step, Hoda. And sometimes I really believe when we want to have a monumental change in our lives, it doesn't have to be a monumental change in the moment. It just has to be one step in its direction. And
Oh,
slowly you look back and you'll see how far you've come.
yeah. I love that. Priyanka Chopra is with us. I love that so much. I feel like we do get stuck. I was watching Warren Buffett give a talk, And he said, one of the most important decisions we'll ever make. He said, whoever you surround yourself with, you become like. It's just part of life. You know, you do it either to keep the peace in your own home. So you kind of adjust and you become kind of like them, or they become kind of like you. And he talked about like the single biggest decision that he's ever made was who he chose to go through life with. That's going to determine how motivated you are, really, what goals you have, what values you choose. Um, Tell me about choosing Nick.
I think, you hit the nail on the head, or more like Warren Buffett did, but he just hits the nail on the head on
Yeah.
everything. So I think, that's what kind of happened for me with Nick. I was just extremely surprised by how secure he is and self-assured he is as
Mm,
a person. I was, I'm the daughter of someone who was my cheerleader, but I'm
mm,
also married to someone who's my loudest cheerleader.
mm,
Like Nick, he gets so much joy in the things that I do. And like he's watched my movie 5 times, and, he's read the book, and he's my hype guy. And I knew that very early on. I remember we were on our third or fourth date, not really a date, it was a group of friends. And we were on a boat on Memorial Day weekend. And I had this big meeting with my team from India and my team from America, having flown down together. And
mm.
that never happened. And I had to go for that meeting. And all the friends were like, don't go, it's Memorial Day weekend. Who works on weekend? And I was like, well, if I had a reason to maybe not go, maybe I won't go. I was trying to be cute and
Yeah.
like hoping that he would be like, well, I hope you don't go. After the third time, I behaved completely like an idiot. He pulled me aside and he looked me dead in the eye and said, I'm not going to tell you to cancel your meeting, because I know if you could have, you would have. And if it's a conflict in your heart, I suggest you go take your meeting, because you've worked too hard to be here. And what I will do, because I know you have FOMO and you're going to feel like you're missing out, I'm going to take our friends out for dinner and wait for you to come back. Go finish your work.
Oh my gosh.
I was
God.
like,
Oh,
right?
oh. If you would have proposed right then, I would have said yes. Yes. Date 3, whatever it
That
was.
doesn't happen. I
Uh-uh.
haven't come across guys
Uh-uh.
that value how much of the pavement I've pounded to get here, And that was one of the big reasons I love that about him.
Wow. Well, Priyanka, we love you. I want people to pick up this book. It is called Unfinished. It's the perfect book. It'll inspire you. It'll make you feel not by yourself. You're so normal. Such a great thing to be normal in this world. Priyanka, thank you so much. Okay, come back and visit us when it's an all clear. Okay,
I will. Thank you so
we'll
much,
be
Hoda, for
waiting for
having
you.
me.